My name is Braunwynn, and I am a peer support specialist. I'm a peer wellness specialist. I'm trained in intentional peer support as well as in other peer support modalities. A little bit about myself is I'm a person who has diverse mental health challenges. I have a diagnosis. That diagnosis took me to prison back in 1999. I'd never been in trouble before, had no prior record, homeowner, good job, all of that. This happened in Michigan. The judge sentenced me to 10 to 20 years. Yeah, that's what I said. I think I was numb and in shock for about 6 months. What I found out is I had been improperly diagnosed for about 20 years. I had been being treated for major depressive disorder when in fact I had bipolar disorder. And what took me to prison, what led to my crime, and I'm gonna put it out there, it was assault with intent to commit murder is what they charged me with. I had been manic for 4 months. I had not slept. I worked, I functioned, I did all of that. And they said I was rapid cycling. So they put me on benzos in the county jail, put me on Klonopin. It helped. That was the first time I felt decent in well over 25 years. When I got to prison, they told me, oh, you can't have those Klonopin. That is controlled substance. We have to wean you off of that. Major shock. Because now I'm freaking out. I'm in this prison. I'm away from my children, something I never ever wanted to be. By the way, I had 3 children when I went into prison. I had a 17-year-old, a 13-year-old, and a 10-year-old. It was hard. So that picture over there on that side, that was in 2005, halfway through my prison sentence. This picture right here is 2015 here in Portland, Oregon. For those that may have a spiritual connection, I was divinely called to be in Portland back in 2005. Amen. And I got here in 2012, and I've been here ever since. I've trained peer support. I've trained, I work for NAMI now. I've done a lot of things. Sharon and I spoke before we did Peer Run Respite here, presentation on that, which Kevin took to the legislature, and then we all went to the legislature and gave testimony. So it's been a beautiful journey. But in prison, there are so many people in prison who have mental altered states of being. When they started this thing with shutting down hospitals and putting people back out in the community, they put us out there with no help, no support, and they just kind of put us out there on these meds, which made us feel super terrible, some of us anyway. This is what prison looks like in the United States. The green piece right there is state prisons. That's over 1 million people in our state prisons right here in the United States. The orange piece right there in the middle is local jails. This gold piece right here is federal prisons and federal jails. That little blue section is youth. We have 48,000 young people in the United States in prison. And when I say youth, I mean under 18. I read a quote a long time ago. I learned something and it made sense to me. In Chinese, the word crisis is composed of 2 separate letters, 2 characters. One character represents danger, but the other one represents opportunity. We have a crisis with mass incarceration in the United States, and here's opportunity for us as collectively to maybe do something about it. So these are numbers. 2.3 million people are in prisons in the United States. The United States has the largest prison population in the world. There's no country compared to this. These are the number of facilities. We have 1,700 state prisons in this country. So about 2/3 of the inmates in these prisons, according to the Department of Justice, and the Federal Bureau of Prison were incarcerated for 4 types of crimes: drugs, sex offenses, weapons and explosions, and robberies. And that statistic came out May of 2017. SAMHSA estimates that about 10.4 million adults in America suffer from serious mental illness, which generally includes conditions such as schizophrenia and bipolar. Most of the prison population identifies as having schizophrenia or bipolar. In Oregon alone, there's 14,000 people in prison, almost 15,000 people. That number is from 2018. In Washington, we have 16,000 people, and that number came from September of 2019. What I found when I was doing a lot of this research and looking this stuff up, Oregon has not kept up the numbers. A lot of the numbers I found for Oregon is old, and I wonder why that is. This is the DOJ as well. They're kind of laxing in their keeping up the data, and I'm going to tell you later on why I think this is. 2006, 50% of people incarcerated had mental health concerns. All of them didn't go in there with a mental health diagnosis. Many of them developed mental health diagnosis once they got there. And that number in Oregon is from, again, 2013. There was almost 5,000 people in Oregon in the prisons that had a mental health diagnosis. There's no current numbers. In Washington, their numbers are a little more current. They have less people in Washington that is reported as having mental health challenges. It's mind-boggling. When I was in prison, and I'm going to describe the way it was in Michigan. In Michigan, the way it was set up was you have a prison. So that means you're isolated from society. You're inside, right? The mental health unit was another unit that was isolated inside of the isolation. And then inside that unit, they were that isolated even more because they were on lockdown 23 hours a day. Because they were not safe to themselves, they were not safe to staff, they were not safe to the general population. What I found disturbing was when they said people were stable and they put them back in general population, people had been in seclusion for 2 or 3 years. They didn't know how to interact with the rest of us. They became prey because they were looking for any type of human connection that they could get. And there's predators in prison. Here you go. This is another passion thing for me as a black woman. And the rate that our young people are going to prison. So if you look at that number, 2001, that means that person is, and I got this last year, and I presented this at the Prisoners Family Conference in Texas last year. That would have made them 18 years of age. The average person that is 18 to 19 years old, this is your likelihood of going to prison. And I know this probably may be hard to see the numbers, but over there it says all men, the age of 18 to 19, 1 out of every 9 will go to prison. For white men, it's 1 in every 17. Black men is 1 in every 3 black men will go to prison. Latinos, 1 in 6. 1 in 6. Women, we're less likely to go, but the numbers are higher for African American women and Latino women. We all heard the news. We already know that there's a lot of racial profiling in this country. You know, if you are a person of color, you're quicker to be stopped by the police than not. That's just how it is. If you are a person having a mental health challenge on the street, you're more likely to be harassed if you are a person of color. And recently we had a police shooting, not too long ago, a couple of weeks ago, of a man who was African American having a mental health state. This was something else that got me. What states have the worst mental health treatment in the United States? It's not Oregon. Somebody said Florida, Texas. Here you go. Alabama, Arkansas, Mississippi, Texas, Georgia, and Florida. Have anybody in here, have you heard of private prisons?
Yes.
Okay. Texas, Georgia, and Florida all are private prisons. You see, they got the worst mental health treatment, but they got the most inmates as well. They're getting paid. It's about money. It's about money. It's not about public safety. It's not about treatment. It's about profits. They're not getting that. That's not there. I spent 8 years and I rehabilitated myself. I didn't get any rehabilitation. I seen a counselor every 3 months. I got my medicine every night. I had to go stand in line to get my medicine because the prescriber came in every 6 months and just rewrote the scripts. I never seen him. Never talked to him. There was no groups. You know, there was nothing. And like you spent 15 minutes with her. She was a social worker. She wasn't a therapist. She was a social worker. And you spend 15 minutes and she's trying to see 1,000 women once every 3 months. It was ridiculous. I had to figure it out for myself. And I'll tell you how I figured it out. There was in the beginning a lady, I didn't even know her name because I only seen her twice. She asked me 2 questions. She asked me, who was I? I didn't even know my identity because my identity had been wrapped up in so many other different things. I didn't know who I was. And then the next thing she asked me was, what was my dreams? And at 38 years old, I stopped dreaming because I had been told so long that I was mentally ill and I would never get better. I didn't have any dreams. But then she asked me, what was my dreams when I was a teenager before all of that? And then she asked me, why come I can't have dreams? Those questions right there sparked the desire for rehabilitation because I know I didn't deserve to be in that prison. I didn't belong there. I was 38 years old and had never had a traffic ticket. Never been in trouble. So here we are. This is what we look like. The most common disease, major depression, bipolar, schizophrenia. I think these numbers are low because who's assessing? Who is assessing people coming in with mental health challenges? They're not assessing that. They're not assessing trauma. They're looking at, you did something that was antisocial in society and we need to punish you. We don't want to hear about what may be wrong because we're not listening. And we want to listen to what the dollars look like. Because every time an inmate goes in, they get $30,000 to $40,000 per year per inmate. And that was back in the early 2000s. I don't know what it's looking like now. This is what we really look like. This is what I felt like when I went in there for the first 6 months. I was confused. I was anxious. I was scared. I felt hopeless. I felt I had nothing. Yes, I'm unable to follow your directions as an officer because I'm having things going on in my head that makes it hard to follow who I'm listening to. You know, I may be hearing voices. I may be having some sort of psychotic challenge. So yes, I'm not hearing what you're saying, but you're not listening to me either. So then I become agitated and frustrated. And then you want to isolate me even more and lock me up. And that's what it is, a vicious cycle, on and on and on and on. You know, and it is truly, for 6 months I was like in shock. I don't remember the first 6 months. I have a problem with this right here. I was talking to my daughter yesterday who's studying psychology at the University of Michigan, and she told me, she said, they teach that most people in prison are antisocial. We have antisocial disorder. I wonder why. I wonder why. So they did the study. So I went and pulled it up. So they did the study and they studied 113 people. And they said 35% of that 113 people had antisocial disorder because they were manipulative and aggressive. how do you characterize somebody as antisocial? Because everybody has a bad day. Everybody has a lot of bad days. Sometimes we can have a bad week and we're irritable and we can feel a little aggressive, you know. But that doesn't make us antisocial. Give us a label. It rubs me the wrong way, and and this is just me. I do not like the DSM. I don't like that book at all because it's labeling. It's putting us in all these classes. If I go through the DSM, I got every diagnosis there is, because at any given day I might have those symptoms going on because I'm a human being, you know. I want to share another story that I read when I was doing this presentation for the prisons in the prisoners conference. It was about a lady who went to prison for retail fraud. She was 56 years old. It was 2014. She went in there. She started having a lot of issues. They isolated her. Then her behavior was, okay, I'm going to get their attention. So she started backing up her toilet in her cell. So the toilet backed up. So they left her in there. They would not fix it. They left her in there. Then when they finally came and got her out, like a week later, from the moisture and the feces, her feet had pretty much rotted. Then they put her in the hospital, and she eventually died. But she went in for retail fraud. She may have had an illness before she went in there. She may have not. But she was not treated. She was locked away in a cell where she eventually wound up getting disease and dying. They didn't treat her. Once she got there and she started exhibiting signs, they didn't treat her. They just locked her away. More isolation. And it happens all too often. We don't hear about the people that die in prison for mental health. We don't hear about the suicides that happen in prison. I just was talking to someone last week, and they're in the trans community. There was a big conversation because here in Oregon, they had 18 trans women commit suicide last year. Here in prison, here in Oregon. So, a couple quick questions. Why do you think some people with diverse mental states end up in prison? Anybody have an idea why we end up in prison and others don't? I heard trauma that cultures go through. No diagnosis and treatment. Unbelief. Terrified of the police. Policing for other concerns and no compassion. I heard addiction. I heard something else here in the middle. No place else to put them. I want to hear more about that. Yes, convenience. Say more about that. Nowhere else to put them. Yeah, no hospitals. No support services. Yeah.
I was working for the state.
Okay.
I remember.
So there's a variety of reasons. Everybody in this room was right. There is a variety of reasons why we go to prison, because we have mental health diagnosis. But the big piece is, it's all about money. It's all about money. It has become the key thing. Just like Big Farm, prisons is the next big money maker, and they're privatizing. We have in this country, 28 states have privatized prisons now. That's prisons for profit. So no wonder our numbers is high. Speaking about aid and assist, that's here in Portland. Didn't hear that in Michigan. However, if they find you competent enough to aid and assist your attorney in your procedure, then you are not sick enough for a hospital. Okay? However, then you got these attorneys or these public defenders who have these super large caseloads, and they just want to move you along the way. So then they're going to say, hey, take a plea deal. They did it to me. Take a plea deal. We will get you this, and this. 5 to 10, and I got 10 to 20 because the judge doesn't have to honor the plea deal. But I have took a plea saying no contest. I'm not saying I'm guilty. I'm not saying I'm innocent. But I'm still going to prison. The laws are screwed up, So there's a lot there, and taxpayers' money. We are funding more negative avenues such as wars and prison than we are healthcare and education. That's where the money's going to the wars, it's going to the prisons, but people can't get healthcare. We can't get education. But we're the taxpayers. Are we standing up and pushing back and saying, hey, no more? It's an opportunity. The crisis is bringing the opportunity. Am I making sense? So, what are some of the basic human rights that's stripped from our prisoners? I'm hearing, I heard respect, I heard resources.
Go where you want to go.
Yeah, with no freedom, privacy, dignity, all of the above. All of the above. Treatment, like I say, it's really non-existent. Prison is just a warehouse for money. So people are stripped of their dignity, self-respect. We lose all our civil rights, all our human rights, and we are constantly being lied to because for so long, I bet you guys didn't know this. They tell you if you are a felon, you can't vote. That is not true. That is not true. Once you are outside of that prison wall, you can go get voter's registration card. They tell you that for I don't know why. But being a felon, I voted in Michigan, I voted in Oregon, I voted in Washington. That has never come up on a voter's registration application about being a felon. It's another lie that they tell us to keep us oppressed. So, here we go. We already know who gets prison. It's people that we don't have enough money to pay top-notch attorneys to fight our cases. It's people who are struggling and unable to advocate for themselves. It's people like this lady over here who's trying to advocate for her son. However, she doesn't have the money to do that. So, her son is sitting there because they say he can aid and assist. Is take a plea. Let's send you to prison. And a lot of times, you get so tired of sitting there because I committed my crime in 1997. I didn't go to prison until 1999. I got tired of going through it. I got tired of going back and forth to court. I got tired of being in the county jail. I got tired. They wore me down. I'll take the plea because I'm ready for this to be over. And that's what they do. That's what they do. So, again, and I have parentheses around it. They send us to prison because we're violent. They send us to prison because we're antisocial. They send us to prison because we're substance users. They send us to prison because we've been disorderly and violent. We're houseless. We're on the street, so we're a nuisance, we're unsafe. We're unsafe to ourselves and others and the officers and all that. Those are all the things that you all named earlier. Why people go to prison. These are the people that get prison. Recidivism. Once you get that number, once you get that label, the slightest little thing they think you did, they want to send you back. Because when you go back through that door, they get tens of thousands of dollars. So if they got tens of thousands of dollars in January for me, and they let me out in April, and I come back in May, they get another bunch of tens of thousands of dollars. People don't know that because you've already been, so they double dipping. It is. You just got paid for the same inmate twice. But that's why they got private prisons though, and the private prisons is making money. They are doing it. We have 28 states that have private prisons. So basically, somewhere along the line, they changed some law somewhere. Grant found a loophole, and the states are buying it because the states are sending people there. It's a money thing. It's a money thing. There needs to be more people talking about it. There needs to be writing more of our Congress and legislatures and doing more of that, advocating on that level to get some of these laws changed. You know, just like here in Oregon, they voted in Measure 11 and PSRB. When I came to Portland, I thought PSRB was the best thing coming. Because I was like, oh, I can go in there. I could have went to prison and got that and then been done. Then I heard people that did less than I did, and they've been on PSRB for 20, 25 years because the psychiatric review board can say when you get off and when you don't. They can say where you live, where you don't live. They can say where you get treatment, where you don't get treatment. They're controlling these people's lives for 20, 25 years for stealing a pack of bubble gum. So then I was like, oh, well, I'm glad I did my 8 years and got out because now I can move on with my life. I don't have nobody telling me where I can shop at, where I can live at, when I can do these things. PSRB is a joke. It's prison. It's beyond prison because it's ongoing. Then you got Measure 11. I ran into that because I have an assault of crime. Can't get a job. I can't get housing. I live in Vancouver now because it was easier for me to find a place to live over there than it was to find it in Portland because I had a felony from 1997. And this was in 2014. So, we voted for those laws because somebody sold us a good idea and didn't give us all the details. We didn't get informed. We didn't educate ourselves. So I think these are the people that get treatment. Those that have private insurance, that's able to get good insurance because some of these community services that we get, they're so overbought that you go in there and you don't really get any help. It's run you through. This is what they say help looks like out here. This is what they say it looks like. Diversion programs, mental health courts. I had to look up what the heck is a specialty mental health probation or parole. I never heard of that. And that specialty is the probation officer is in charge of everything you do. And basically they can mandate you to treatment. They do intensive case management, but it's a parole officer or a probation officer. And you're jumping through hoops. You're jumping through their hoops and they have the control to whether you stay free or go back. And that's every one of these programs. They're telling you what to do, when to do it, how to do it. So basically these are all criminal justice type interventions. They're not preventions, which is what we need. When I came out of prison, they sent me to an adult foster care home. And they told me, go to the Social Security office and get your disability because you're broken, you will never work again. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? First they held me 6 months longer than they were supposed to. I was supposed to come home August 2006. But my son was murdered that March. Yeah, my son was murdered 2 weeks before I was supposed to see the parole board. So I went to the parole board. My dad was there with me, supported me all the way through it. Told them the story. He's like, this woman has been here, and in this time she's been here, her oldest son went to prison. Her mother died, and her youngest son was murdered 2 weeks ago. He said, but I've seen nothing but growth in her and change in her. Because my nephew was losing it. He wanted to do what most of us want to do, revenge. No, that's not what we're going to do. We're going to do these two things. We're going to forgive this young man, and we're going to pray for him and his mother. And my father, who was 70-something years old, looked at me like I had lost my mind. And my nephew too, and all the tears stopped. And they was like, I am sitting in this prison cell because I hurt somebody. And I want to be forgiven. And I want to be prayed to be free. My oldest son went to prison for murder. He was in college. I don't know what happened. I was locked up. I want somebody to forgive him. And I pray for his freedom. So if I want these things, I got to give them. And it changed my life. So when they sent me to the foster care home, they kept me till February. Matter of fact, tomorrow will be 13 years that I've been out of the prison. 13 years. Somebody introduced me to peer support in Michigan. So I came home. My mom had died, so I had left me money. I bought a used car. I bought a house so that I have a roof over my head. I still own that house. 13 years later, I still own that house. Hadn't been home 5 months, but I bought a house. I got a job as peer support specialist, and I have not looked back. My recovery has continued to go strong ever since. So people are in these places, and they're in these prisons, and they're feeling hopeless. They need some peer support to come up in there and show them that life didn't stop there. Because if I had to sit down and listen to them people say, get this Social Security wouldn't give me any money anyway. They told me, you function too good. You're too intelligent. We're not giving you no check. And I can't live off of that anyway. Yeah. So these are all supposed to be criminal justice interventions. But again, we need prevention. These are what we have in the form of mental health interventions. Assertive community treatment. Again, everything you do is controlled by somebody. A case manager or something, they're calling all the shots. What happened to my choice? What happened to my hope? What happened to my voice? I don't have it. Where's my dignity? Where's my self-respect? These programs aren't doing it. But this is the treatment that's out there. This is what we need. We need better assessment of people who are having mental health challenges. We need better assessment of the trauma that people have experienced. I didn't know anything about trauma until way later. And then when I look at it, because of in my culture, some of the things that went on in my household and went on in my neighborhood, I thought was normal. Because it was happening in a lot of families and a lot of people around me. It was our culture. However, that's why I was undiagnosed with bipolar, because when I was manic and I was irritable and yelling and screaming or whatever I was doing, that's what I seen my mom do. But in prison, I learned what mania looked like. I learned what those symptoms looked like, and then I could see, wow, my aunt did that, and this is how my grandmother did that, and all that was untreated. All that was untreated, and all that untreatment led to a lot of trauma for me, my brothers, my nephews, all of us. So, okay, nobody assessed that. For 25 years, nobody assessed that. It had never been diagnosed. I didn't finally get a PTSD diagnosis until 2016 here in Portland. Is when I finally got diagnosed with PTSD. We need more person-directed approaches. We need to go in there and be able to talk to people, and this is what we do in peer support, and find out what it is that they need. Because part of what's upsetting people is they're not being heard. If you're not hearing me, You can't help me. You think you know what I need, but you don't. I know what I need better than anybody else out here. So why aren't we using a more person-directed approach? And then we need more peer support. We train them. I've been training them for 8 years. We got thousands of peer supports right here in Portland looking for work. Because we do not conform to the clinical model of telling people what to do. We come alongside of them and let it be person-directed. We come alongside of them and find out what is their strengths, what is their hopes, what is their dreams. And we look at it from that perspective, and then we help them. That's what somebody did for me. However, when we get into these systems, they really try to change the dynamic of the work that we do. I've been here 8 years. When I was in Michigan, I didn't have that. When we went in there with an idea of something that would help people, like aftercare. We developed the aftercare program. It's like people get out of the hospital, they don't show up for their appointment. So we decided as peer supports, we wanted to come together as a team. We would make calls to these people. We would go to their house and sit down and talk to them. We would meet them before they got out the hospital. We would find out what the barrier was, if they needed a bus ticket or if they needed a ride. We would also let them know that once we got there, if they were willing, we had a direct line to the receptionist to call and get them an appointment the next day. But we developed that as peer supports. Try to take that to one of these agencies here. They're not, no, because that's not going to work. We have some peer support, peer run agencies that are doing it, but they are they're because they can't get the recognition. They're not, and like you say, it's all about funding and billing and all of that other stuff. So it's really messy. But I think another thing is the prevention is key to keeping people out of prison. And if we do get in there, we need to go in there before it's time for them to be released. Me going in there and talking one time is not enough to a room full of ladies like this or a room full of guys like this. That's not going to do it. They need a peer support or a mentor to come in there and help them figure out how to get their birth certificate because they're going to need an ID, how to get their social security card, how to figure out make a plan. There's nobody helping nobody plan. They're just releasing you out the door, sending you to parole offices, and then they're telling you more hoops to jump through. You know? So, we need somebody to come in 6 months to a year before and walk alongside of that person. And once they release, walk alongside of them another 6 months to a year till they get stable. They need to see some role models. They need to see that it happens, it works. You know, those are some of the things that I think we need. Here I am, peer support. This is what peer support is. These are the principles that we live by. A lot of agencies really try to change that. But the first thing is peer support is voluntary. I have to choose it if that's what I want. Don't just link me with somebody because you say you need a peer support. No. But that happens. Yeah, so and I like this very last piece. These are pure grace, compassionate, and mercy. That's what we show when we do peer support. We're showing grace, we're showing compassion, and we're showing mercy for the next person as other human beings. Police officers, correctional officers. Did you know correctional officers only have to have a GED? That's the only thing they need. They don't need anything else other than a GED or a high school diploma. They need trauma training. They need to be trauma informed. They need to be able to recognize when a person is having some sort of crisis and how to support that person. Here, if I'm in a state, I'm not hearing you. You know, I'm frustrated. I'm not hearing you. I'm yelling. You yelling at me to sit down or whatever. But I'm hearing 12 voices at one time. So I'm not listening to. I can't hear you and obey what you're saying. You need to be able to recognize that. When I was in prison, there was a young lady who used to have seizures. She had been in prison 20 years. She had been what they call flopped 8 times. Every time she went to the parole board, they said because of her behavior, they weren't going to release her. Part of what was going on with this young lady was nobody was listening to her. When she was feeling sick or she felt it was time, she needed some medicine or she was about to have, they didn't hear her. And she would go off on those officers. So somewhere along the line, she gravitated and grabbed a hold of me. And the lady she left with, she said, she's like, Braunwynn, you got such a calm voice. So I talked to this lady and I started talking to her and I started explaining to her why she was not getting out. And she stopped arguing and fighting with the officers. She stopped going to segregation. She stopped getting into trouble, but she still had seizures. And any time that she had a seizure, nobody would touch her. They would run and come get me. Because they knew that if anybody else got near her when she came out, she was swinging and fighting. But if they came and got me, I could sit there with her and talk with her until she came out, until she was okay. She eventually got out of prison. But she did 8 years longer than she should have. But again, nobody was hearing what she was saying. So yeah, training. And when I talk about trauma, and I think they're going to talk more about it next month, is you need to know how to respond to a person without reactivating their trauma. You know, I hear this word flying around, this is trauma-informed care, this is trauma-informed care. No, it is not. Please learn how to respond to me as a human being with empathy and compassion, and then you won't reactivate my trauma. But when you come at me yelling and screaming and telling me what to do, you just took away my self-respect, my dignity, and you just activated my trauma. They need to be trained. I mean, and that's our police officers too, because they're still struggling with this, and they got crisis interventions training, but they're still out here doing the same thing. I hate to say it, but they bullies. They harass people all the time, and then and unfortunately, people are dying. How do you teach it? When I talk about it, and I'm still learning. I'm not the expert here. I'm not perfect. But when I talk about it, and I ask people, walk 1 mile in my shoes, travel my journey, understand me from that perspective, see what it feels like to be what I've been through. That's one thing. And then the next piece is, I keep reminding us we're all human beings. We all come in this world the same way, and we're all going to leave here one day. And we need to learn how to coexist together. And I say that. It's like, I'm not your enemy. I'm not here to hurt you. Let me help you, or you can help me. And I think another piece is, people want to feel safe. They want some transparency. Because if we don't have transparency, we don't trust. So that I walk in honesty. I walk in integrity. And I try to encourage other people to do that. That's in my circle. And sorry, if you're toxic and you're not walking in transparency and integrity, you're out of my circle. Sorry. So, again, I said crisis is danger, but it's also opportunity. This is an opportunity for us as people, collectively, to start speaking up, start writing some letters, start making some phone calls, start sharing with our other groups, because I know each one of us in here touches at least 3 or 4 other people. And as we touch those 3 or 4 other people and share that, they touch 3 or 4 other people. And that's how we make change. I mean, rethinking psychiatry is a grassroots movement for change, to look at things from other perspectives. We can maybe turn this into an opportunity to stop this mass incarceration of people, especially people with mental health diagnoses. So that's all that I had. Oh, thank you.